Marvelous hello, Persona fans! So, if you caught that not E3 Xbox showcase today, you saw that the second trilogy of Persona games are coming to Xbox consoles and PC. Jury's still out on if we'll see them on other consoles, and I'd like to assume we will, but who knows. The point is, as of right now, we are getting Persona 3 on modern hardware. Specifically, Persona 3 Portable. And I figure that gives me the perfect opportunity to talk about the female protagonist. The female protagonist from Persona 3 Portable has always been the focal point for a handful of divisive topics amongst Persona fans. Some people believe that her added story makes Persona 3 Portable better than FES. Others believe that her existing in a separate continuity from the other mainline games makes her little more than pointless fan service. And heck, a lot of us can't even agree on what her name is. Many Western fans call her Minako, which is weird because Minato is already a unisex name. Japanese fans dubbed her Hamuko, Famitsu once called her Runako, and the Persona 3 stage play called her Kotone Shiormi, which is probably the closest we have to a canonical name as of the time of making this video, since it's the name that was used in the official Persona 3 crossover event with Puzzle and Dragons, making it the only name ever used in an actual video game. Anyway, after a lot of intensive thinking about everybody's favorite female protagonist in the Persona series, yeah, I said what I said, one thing I found myself thinking about was how Persona 3 Portable removed the ability to give the protagonist whatever weapon you want. They saddled Makoto with one-handed swords, but gave Kotone the slightly more interesting naginata. And so today, I've decided that I want to take a look at all of Kotone's weapons throughout Persona 3 Portable. Even though a lot of them aren't actually naginata, I want to address that now. Originally, I was thinking of just going through all 21 of her weapons one by one, but as I was recording footage, I realized how many of them get reused. So in order to keep from repeating myself, I'll just be going through the 9 different models and addressing the individual weapons in each section. So sit back and get comfy as I discuss the numerous naginata of Kotone Shiormi. And what better place to start than with her very first weapon. This naginata has a black handle and a thin silver blade with only a couple of gold bands thrown on. There's really not a whole lot to even say about this one. The 3 weapons that use this model are her starting weapon, the imitation naginata, described as a replica not meant for real combat, another one of her weaker weapons, the tsukushi naginata, that's just referred to as sharp-bladed, and the kanemitsu, which is the greatest naginata made. Which would be cool if it were actually true, but it's only her 4th best weapon. While I said there's not a lot to say here, I've admitted that I have a fondness for simplicity in design, so I can't say I particularly dislike this model for keeping things relatively basic. The next model I want to talk about is almost exactly the same, but makes a few changes to help it stand out. Aside from a gold tip at the edge of the now brown handle and a unique silver pattern etched across the blade, it's virtually identical. The weakest of these 3 is the Tsukemitsu, which is apparently a sword, and was the work of Ichimonji Yoshioka, which from my understanding was a blacksmithing school that primarily made swords, so it's kinda weird to see this one as a naginata. Then there's Sonabe's naginata, which was a blade used by a skilled warrior. This is most likely in reference to Sonabe Hideo, a woman who taught weapon-based martial arts in girls' schools and whose teachings with naginata were quickly popularized. The last weapon with this design is the Iwao Toshi. A few things to say about this one. For one, its name is probably a misspelling of Iwa Taoshi, which was the naginata wielded by the famed Japanese warrior monk Benkei during Japan's Heian period. Secondly, unlike the Kanemitsu from the previous section, this one actually is Kotone's best naginata. I mean, it's her 3rd strongest weapon, but her best naginata. I'll get into that later. The last thing I want to address about this design is that it's the one we see Kotone holding in her artwork for Puzzle and Dragons, the game that finally got most people to acknowledge Kotone as her current name. Given Iwa Tooshi's strength, I have to imagine this is the weapon she's holding in this particular art piece. Our next naginata model kicks things up a notch. There's a much more prominent arm guard on it, and the blade itself is much thicker, with an extra notch and fang sticking up from the top, with some fantastic etchings that give it a bit more detail. The brown and gold handle isn't anything too special, but the blade is the main thing that catches the eye here. I'm also probably going to mispronounce most of the blades that use this model. First, there's the Mei Jiandao, which is just called a simple long hilt blade. Now, Jiandao is a Chinese word for dagger, but that's all I was particularly able to find. Next up is the Chun Chiu Dadao, or Spring Autumn Knife. This is a traditional weapon used in Shaolin Kung Fu, and looking it up, it's pretty accurate to this model's design. Despite using the same model, this one has been upgraded to a stylish long hilt blade. And lastly is the Fengtian Huaji, which is a long weapon wielded by Lu Bu, a famous Chinese military general popularized in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So all three of these seem to draw more from Chinese history, which is pretty cool given this model's design. Our next model is another palette swap, but I'll confess this is probably my personal favorite. While we still have the enhanced etched blade from the previous section, this one mixes up the colors and gives us this stellar combination of blue, silver, and gold. It's one of the stronger designs with the best color scheme. I can dig it. Unlike every other model so far, there are only 2 weapons in the game that use this one, and if you put together a list of Kotone's weapons from weakest to strongest, they're actually right next to each other. First up is the Qinlong Yanyue, which P3P describes as a long-handled saber with a green dragon etched into it. Like the previous model, this one is more clearly based on the Chinese Guandao, rather than the Japanese naginata. The name of this weapon and its description are in reference to another Chinese general referenced in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Guan Yu, who wielded the green dragon crescent blade. The last blade to use this model, and the strongest to use this one or the previous one, is also the only one that doesn't seem based on Chinese lore. The Ame no Nuboku, or Heavenly Jeweled Spear, is described as the halberd used in the creation of the world. This is the mythical naginata wielded by Izanagi in order to create the world's first landmasses. Presumably this weapon is also the basis for the spear Izanagi holds in his Persona 4 design. Crazy how such a legendary and world-defining weapon can just be bought from a cop at our local mall. Alright, so that's it for the serious weapons with interesting and meaningful backstories, but now, let's get into the fun stuff, shall we? Our next model is just a straight-up hockey stick. It's a brown wooden hockey stick complete with the delightful cloth tape adornments. Her first weapon with this model, only one step above her imitation naginata, is the wood stick, which is described as a wooden hockey stick. It delivers what it promises. Next is the composite stick, which is made of composite material, which I can only assume is wood and a different kind of wood. Then lastly, there's the Japan stick, which is filled with burning souls, which kinda makes it all the more hilarious that it's just a hockey stick. All jokes aside, I love that she just straight up has a hockey stick. But wait, there's more. Kotone actually has 2 types of hockey sticks, with the other seemingly based more on a goalie stick since it has a much thicker end to block incoming pucks. The dark blue and black color scheme looks really awesome, and the best touch of all is the giant Atlas logo printed on the side of this thing. Though, this is their old logo, so only time will tell if this model ever gets updated to current logo standards. Once again, we've got 3 to pick from. There's the Youth Stick, which is soaked in sweat and tears. Ew. There's the Victory Stick, which is filled with the resolve to win, and lastly the Atlas Stick, which was custom made for Atlas, which at least explains the giant logo. Again, I love this one. It is insanely satisfying to smack down shadows with the Atlas logo itself. Alright, so that only leaves us with 4 weapons to go. Each of these have their own unique model, so I'll just be going through them one at a time. In a game where Kotone has access to 2 different types of hockey stick weapons, it's kinda weird to think of this one as her joke weapon. But that's apparently what they had in mind when they gave her the sturdy wooden stick that is the lacrosse stick. I really don't have a lot to say about this one. It's a lacrosse stick. It's a stick for playing lacrosse and beating up shadows. Also, they spelled lacrosse wrong. Now, Kotone's next joke weapon is genuinely awesome, the Beam Naginata, which is described as a gift from the future. This is a silver naginata with a yellow lightsaber-esque blade on both ends. That's cool enough on its own, but the absolute best part of this weapon is... well, I'll just let you hear for yourself. Heck yeah. Remember how earlier I said that the Iwatoshi was Kotone's best naginata, even though it was only her third best weapon? Well, that's because these last two unique weapons are very distinctly not naginata, nor are they guandao, halberds, or anything else all that similar. Doesn't mean they're not cool, just feels weird to set that up as her weapon of choice and then go, nah, when it comes to her two best ones. Oh well. First up is the Kakara, which is obtained by fusing Aravaka into a Nile weapon. This pewter staff adorned with 6 rings was originally useful for monks to announce their presence and spook off animals. It would later be used to lay the smackdown on animals that weren't spooked off, which I guess is pretty close to what we're doing. The item is often used when performing chant, so it does feel a little weird running around just hitting things with it. A very minor complaint I have is that I wish this thing actually did make noise. They had the smarts to put in a whoosh with the beam naginata, but didn't think this thing could have a little jingle jangle? And that brings us to our final weapon, the Velvel Maruga. This is Kotone's best weapon, and must be created by fusing Kartikia into a Nile weapon, and it's a spear. It's just a straight up spear. The description even calls it a spear. What's funny is that it still deals slash damage, and not pierce damage like all of Ken's spears that are also clearly spears. It's a nice looking spear, and I enjoy the incorporation of Kartikia's feather into it. The name comes from a divine spear in Hindu lore known as Vel. It's just crazy how we got from a black-handled fake naginata not designed for fighting to this all-powerful holy spear. Alright, and with that I've covered all of Kotone's weapons. Except all her ones from Persona Q2. What were some of your favorites? Did you have fun today? Are you excited to play as Kotone on modern consoles? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks again for joining me on another wacky adventure. Until next time, take care.